I was approached when I was still poet laureate, parliamentary poet laureate. I was approached by Heritage Canada to write the official Black History Month poem last year. And it's good to know we have official Black History Month poems. Wonderful, and all sponsored by the Department of Canadian Heritage. Perfect. And I thought, okay, what could I write that could be comprehensive and easily accessible and useful? And I thought a list of names of African Canadians who've achieved something one way or another. I also stuck in the names of a few African Canadian potential victims of miscarriages of justice, which no one has noticed yet. Maybe someone here will. That was my mischievous way of making sure that some Black Canadian potential, arguably victims of legal injustices decades past might also be recognized as having been, in a sense, heroes and heroines, and in terms of having endured their respective martyrdoms, so to speak. I think that's all I really should have to say about the poem. Again, it's fairly simple, just a list of names. Tim is going to improvise. One other thing I got to say about this poem is we are all going to hear this for the first time with Tim's accompaniment. This is very much jazz. I'll read, he will feel his way into the music and improvise a response to the words. And so this is, anyone who's not here or doesn't see or hear the tape that we're making of this performance is just out of luck. And I will not add the S word in part of that, which is, I think, a fairly common maritime refrain. So, one more thing too, sorry, but just to build on what was just said so eloquently about diversity and the importance of diversity, I think it's becoming increasingly clear how lucky we are to be in Canada. And that's not to say, to speak to the converted here, about the excellencies of this nation vis-a-vis one located somewhat south of the 49th parallel. What I'm really trying to get at is I think we're finally beginning, and I emphasize just beginning, to recognize the promise of the Charter in terms of fleshing out, and I don't mind saying it, a pure Elliott Trudeau vision of Canada, which is what we are now living through and with. Diverse, cosmopolitan, multiracial, multi-faith, multicultural, of course, officially bilingual, with special emphasis and notice of the special obligation that First Nations have to the Crown, which is still the head of state in terms of this nation. And there's a long ways to go. We do not have yet a just society. We do not have a society of real equality of opportunity and egalitarianism, not yet. And I also want to mention very quickly here as well the fact that we have gender equality enshrined in the Constitution, another major aspect of creating or helping us to finally arrive at a position of real equality, egalitarianism for everybody, and equality of opportunity for everybody in this society. I think we're on the way, and I think it's really promising that we can have a holiday season with stamps issued for Hanukkah, for Diwali, for, of course, Christmas, be followed up very quickly by Black History Month, Chinese New Year, Asian New Year, in a sense as well. And of course, I got to reference Robbie Burns Day for all the Scots, which I also celebrated in Toronto this year. The rousing celebration, lots of flights of scotch and so on and so forth. And we even had the Haggis for crying out loud, the bagpipers at a crowded bar in Western Toronto. And of course, I was proud to be one of the Nova Scotians present to represent Scotland for crying out loud. Anyway, enough of the preliminaries, but thank you so much for your patience in hearing me say this. And I'll just also mention very quickly that I just authored an article for Policy Options that's available online. And it's about potential improvements to the Constitution of this country, beginning with perhaps recognizing, at least this is the idea I have, that we might want to look at revisiting the Constitution. I know how horrible everybody is. Everybody's afraid of touching it and so on. But I do think we might be moving in the direction, given the recent announcement by the federal government, by the Prime Minister, that it might be possible for us to actually enshrine indigeneity as a fundamental characteristic of the country. And so that everything is interpreted legally through the lens of indigeneity, which would include, of course, Inuit and Métis realities. So that over time, the effect of this provision, if in fact it were introduced into the Constitution, would allow this country to evolve with full recognition of our foundations in indigeneity. So hopefully someone here will pick up that call put forward by a poet and run with it and make it happen. So we're ready to begin. I think I'll just finally take a sip of water here. And here we go. Roll call for Aurelia Morin Clarke, my daughter, and her generation. Mikhail Jean, Ann Coos, Maestro Fresh Wes, Viola Desmond, Oscar Peterson, Harriet Tubman, Elijah McCoy, July Black, Leonard Brathwaite, and Charles Roach. Present. Fitzroy Gordon, Marianne Shannon Carey, Pearline Oliver, W.P. Oliver, Carrie Best, Lincoln Alexander, Drake, Les Oliver, and William Andrew White. Present. Portia May White, Austin Chesterfield Clark, Dion Brand, Claire Harris, Nathaniel Dett, Mary Sarsfield, Osborne Anderson, Monica Gaylord, and Stanley Grizel. Present. Rachel Manley, Burnley A. Rocky Jones, Richard Preston, Edna Maisie Phillip, David Tariandi, Deborah Miller Brown, Loris Elliott, and Yvonne Atwell. Present. Lydia Jackson, Matilda Costa, Rita Cox, Spire Jones, Lennox Lewis, Harry Jerome, Mecca Cotto, George Boyd, Linda Carvery, and Dee Dee Jackson. Present. Audrey-Zena Mandiella, Sean Bell, Amanda Marshall, Eddie Carver, Liberty Silver, Michael Van Kooten, Andrea Lewis, and Michael Lee Chin. Present. Marjorie Turner Bailey, Lawrence Hill, Marie-Joseph Angelique, Ben Jackson, Doreen Lewis, James Robertson Johnston, Corinne Sparks, George Dixon, and Joyce L. Ross. Present. Sylvia Hamilton, James A. R. Kinney, Edith Hope Cromwell, Edwin H. Gordon, Joan Jones, Jeremiah Jones, Oliver Jones, Suzette Mayer, Nikki Clark, and Dawn Meredith. Present. Mayan E. Francis, Delmore Buddy Day, Janet Sayers, Sam Langford, Percy Paris, Wanda Thomas Bernard, Franz Benjamin, Jennifer Holness, and Herb Carnegie. Present. L. Jones, Walter Gordon, Dream Warriors, Maxine Tynes, Julius Isaac, Paul Wynn, Carly Nation, Pierre Bonga, Shane Book, Donna Nurse, and Seraphim Joe Fortes. Present. Salome Bay, Lawrence Yitzhak Brathwaite, Simone Denny, Troy Burl Bailey, Cudis, Velma Carter, Charles Officer, Prevail, Leah S. Carter, and Tyrone Winston. Present. Rosemary Brown, Arnold A. August, Zanina Akonde, Alvin Curling, Yolanda James, George Rogers, Sean Alfred, Vernon Wamestein, and Ahmed Hassan. Present. Charles Spurgeon Fletcher, Sharon Lee Williams, Rachel Crawford, Leroy Sibbles, Clyde Gray, Dorothy Proctor, Joe Seeley, Grant Fewer, Marina Gale, and Diana Cadeau. Present. Lillian Allen, Cameron Bailey, Ray Don Chong, Archie Lane, Arden Bess, Lalia Halfpenny, Donald Fairfax, Marianne Chambers, and Cadence Weapon. Present. Abraham Kelly Walker, Chuck Clear, Rella Brathwaite, Anthony Phelps, Jay Hope, Rosemary Saglier, Bromley Armstrong, Deborah Cox, and Samuel Dellenberg. Present. Karis Newton Thompson, Charlie Biddle, Peggy Downs, Anthony Sherwood, Keith Ford, Andrew Elaine Lawrence, Fred Christie, Beverly Maskell, and Nelson Simons. Present. Karen Robinson, Hugh Burnett, Fred Ward, Arlene Duncan, Calvin Lawrence, Phil Edwards, Jennifer Hodge de Silva, George Godfrey, Jennifer Hostin, and Selman Jacob. Present. Quantisha, Nigel Sean Williams, Craig Smith, Allison Seeley Smith, Michael Fraser, Makila Smith, Shaylin Pierre Dixon, Rita Deverell, and Anthony Stewart. Present. Misha Ruger Goskin, Clement Virgo, William Peyton Hubbard, Willie O'Reilly, Tree Anthony, Anthony Bennett, Afua Cooper, and Denzel Sinclair. Present. Perdita Felician, Dallas Davis, Margaret Best, James Calvert Best, Shelton Brooks, E.C. Adukian, Natasha Eloy, Rose Fortune, and Emmanuel Dubourg. Present. Aeneas Garnowski, Josiah Henson, Fifi Dobson, William Hall, Doug Matic, Kamala Jean Gopi, Cecil Foster, Nalo Hopkinson, and Matt Galloway. Present. Karen LeBlanc, Olivier Lejeune, Molly Johnson, Israel Idonije, Yana McIntosh, Jerome Aginla, Tabora Johnson, and Daniel Egali. Present. Jackie Richardson, Gloria Rugen, Renee Lee, Calvin Ruck, Ovid Jackson, Pauline Christian, Samuel Ogali Obo, Olive Sr., Hayden Neal, and Chris Spence. Present. Cree Summer, Noreen Virgin, Sheila White, Makita Silvera, Chris White, Rascals, Angela Taylor Isajenko, Shad, Shakira Saida, and Burr Plato. Present. Juanita Westmoreland Traore, Thrust, Jackie Washington, Ronaldo Walcott, Dubai Young, Clifton Joseph, Ken Lewa, Tanya Lee Williams, and Stephen Williams. Present. Geraldine Clark, Nettie Clark, Gerald Clark, Anna Minerva Henderson, Bill White, Shelley Hamilton, Howard McCurdy, Joan Mendes, Dudley Laws, and Graham Downey. Present. Andre Alexis, Vivian Barbeau, Nega Mazlikia, Malcolm Gladwell, Melissa Ford, Charmaine Hooper, Chaos, Cardinal Official, and Nicole Lynn. Present. Agnes Calisti, Peter E. McCarroll, For the Moment, Brainerd Blyden Taylor, Esmeralda Thornhill, Charles R. Saunders, Althea Prince, and Tony McCagney. Present. This is the bridge. Sonnet LeBay, Denis Laferriere, Maurice Agnon, Bucky Adams, Tessa McWatt, Nandy Othiambo, Francis Ann Solomon, and Little X. Present. Vanessa Morgan, Sylvia Sweeney, Michael Cateau, Shadrach Minkins, RT, Donna Michelle, St. Bernard, Samita, Sandra Levy, and Graham Norman Cromwell. Sandra Levy and Graham Norman Cromwell. Present, Linda Carvery, Malcolm Azania, Sweet Daddy Siki, Sugar Plum Croxon, Faith Nolan, G98.7, Tanika Charles, and Marcellus Francois. And Marcellus Francois. Present. Cheryl Fogel, George Seppaday, Scruffmouth, Andrea Thompson, Tanya Evanson, Yuzoma Esenwani, Ritalin, Juanita Peters, and Stanley Payon. Present. Debbie Durango Adem, Clyde Brooks, Adena Sumter Freetime, Charles C. Smith, Shantae Grant, Motion, Anthony Joyette, Valerie Mason John, and Gemini. Present. Ika Sadu, George Augusta Gordon, Only the Haitian Sensation, Winsome, Pamela Mordecai, Richard Eiton, Sharon Welch, David Woods, and Dwayne Morgan. Present. Grace Channer, Leo W. Bertley, Adrian Shadd, Harold Hidd, Daryl Gray, Gwen Johnston, Lenny Johnston, Marlene Green, Khadija McCall, and David Skip States. Present. Karen Miranda Honesty, Bill Scott, Vera Cujo, Jonathan de Guzman, Archie Craig, Jarvis Church, Charles H. Esty, Vicente B. Haley, and Henley Tulloch. Present. Julie Williams, P. Anthony Johnstone, Geraldine Browning, Gary Archibald, Phil Aiken, Clay Bennett, Everest Blaze, Ayana Black, and Gerard Etienne. Present. Caroline Cole, David George, Boston King, Aubrey Cherubin, Kenneth Montague, Julian de Guzman, Emery Burns, Wanda Robeson, and Max Dorson V. Present. Reuben Hurricane Carter. Reuben Hurricane Carter. Reuben Hurricane Carter. John Morant, Gregory Charles, David DeFeatbon, Tadja Essen, Billy Downey, Dirk Graham, Laura Creavalli, and Rosie Douglas. And Rosie Douglas. And Roosevelt Douglas. Present. Catherine McKittrick, Bob Dawson, Roy States, Dorothy Shad Shreve, Russ Kelly, Zoom Lee, Bev Shannon, Richard Fung, Daryl Maxwell, Don Tyler Watson, and Abel Maxwell. Present. Ferguson Jenkins, Nelson Mandela, honorary Canadian citizen, Amelia E. Johnson, Mark Saunders, Sandy Seal, Lennox Farrell, Lennox Brown. I gotta go back and repeat that name, Sandy Seal, Sandy Seal, Sandy Seal, Lennox Farrell, Lennox Brown, Daniel Hill, Dan Hill, and George McCurdy. Present. Kay Livingston, Owen Rowe, Fred Hodges, Kathy Searles, Edgeworth Searles, Curly Christian, Kathy Grant, Isaac Phils, Sam Eswick, Wilma Morrison, and Denham Jolly. Present. Marlene Jennings, Donald Moore, Clyde Carty, Sarah Onyango, Adolphus Carty, Emily Mills, Wilson Head, Bill Carty, Carlotta Weymouth, and Albert Carty. Present. Marcy Ian, Michael Pinball Clemens, Elise Harding Davis, Walter Peters, Sean Foyne, Stephen Blizzard, Gerald Carty, Juliet Daniel, and Donald Carty. Present. Medicine Hat Wally, Albert Johnson, Aisha Brown, Morgan Campbell, George Singh, Janaya Khan, George Ethel Carter, Susan Owen, The Gospel Ears, and Tricks. Medicine Hat Molly, Albert Johnson, Medicine Hat Molly. Present. King, A.T. Augustine, Egbert Gay, Ivy Lawrence Meunier, Chris Herring, Bob White, Madeline Simons, Anthony Mansfield, Gene Augustine, and Donald Oliver, QC, and Donald Oliver, QC. Present, Divine Brown, Marshall Jordan, The Weeknd, Michelle Williams, Lord, John G. Dennison, Cecilia Reynolds, Dorothy Williams, Lynn Jones, David Austin, and Trevor Payne. Present, Olivia McGilchrist, Eustace Mead, Suzanne Boyd, Horace Goddard, Alan Jones, Amina O'Dea, Godfrey Cambridge, Angela Sanders, and Mifflin Mr. Gibbs. Present, Michigny, Andre DeGrasse, Roy Herring, Marie-Françoise Migy, Peter Slowly, Clotilda Yakinchuk, Clarence Clemens, Nashla Agil, Wayne Adams, and Carl James. Present, Trey Armstrong, Jamel McGuire, Andrew Craig, Dominique Grant, Delon Allen, Ned Blair, Roz Roach, Anthony Sterling, Mark Beckles, B. Kwame, and George Edward Carter. Present, Joan Pierre or LaPierre Jr., Warren Moon, Denise Jones, Isaac Olawale, Lily Johnson, Eddie Bullen, Mark Strong, Diane Lee Clements, and Siobhan Ferron. Present, Nicole Waldron, Hamid Rashid, Ralph James, Donna Alexander, Harry Gary, H.A.J. Gus Wedderburn, Chloe Charles, Bernice Carnegie, and Sheldon Taylor. Present, Hadaya Rodriguez, Cusio Clayton, Wendy Jones, Corey Bells, Farley Flex, Andrea Case, Audley James, Carl Cassell, Margaret Parsons, and Alan P. Arthur. Present, Ngozi Paul, Aiden Church, Chuck Ely, Obanua Akafo, Bernie Custis, Quisha Wint, Rudy Kwame Williams, Cheryl A. Bernard, and Michael Thompson. Present, Tammy Sutherland, Robert Sutherland, Kaya Cater, Lawrence Wilberforce McClarty, Louise Delisle, Russ Kelly, Dwight Drummond, Jordan Clark, Desmond Cole, and Aston Hall. Present, Chloe Cooley, Roberto Bubba Allen, Mitzi Hunter, Oren Isaacs, James Mink, John Lane, Louis Kevin Celestin, Dominique Anglade, and Donald McLeod. Present, Sandy Hudson, John Elaine, Jeffrey Prince, Tamira Russell, Alvin McCurdy, Krisha Turner, Byron Park, Dexter Pert, Valerie Steele, and Alton C. Parker. Present, Sandra Brewster, Michael Chambers, John Black, Addie Alstock, David Zapparoli, Stella Fakizi, Selwyn Richards, Anika J. Jordan, and Michael Tullock. Present, Erica DeFreitas, Jelani Morgan, Christina Leslie, Howard L. Petros, Sonia Gotti Togobago, Stan Douglas, Deanna Bowen, and Larnell Lewis. Present, last stanza. reveal, reveal thy presence. Oh, reveal, reveal, reveal thy presence. Roll call ends with you. Roll call ends with you. Reveal, 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 reveal thy presence. 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 Please feel free to ask some questions, and of course, I don't know if Tim would like to answer some questions as well, but he's here, yeah, so please, go ahead.
How did you come up with all the names? What research did you do to get those names? And I didn't hear George Elliott Clarke's name in there.
False modesty.
I thought that was going to be the grand finale. George Elliott Clarke.
More important to have my daughter's name there, frankly, as encouragement to her and her generation, and to go forward and do more, and keep on doing more, and so on. So I think that is the history of the disempowered minorities as well as indigenous people in this country, is that, again, coming back to what I was saying earlier, there is still a long ways to go. We're not where we should be and where we should have been decades ago, but we're on the way, and we're all in motion together. Those of us of goodwill and with some knowledge of history, I think we are willing to make the accommodations necessary to move our whole society forward to being not only the world's best country, but the world's most just nation. I think there are baby steps maybe. We might look back on this era and say, oh, they weren't really doing enough, they weren't going fast enough, they weren't going far enough. You know, future generations may look back at us, ourselves right now at this moment and say, well, we had a chance, but we blew it. But I'd like not to think so. I'd like to think that incremental as the progress may be, that there is real progress, and that the progress will be much further and faster if those of us with goodwill continue on insisting on it, and not to ignoring the possibility of doing unexpected things, breaking with formerly oppressive traditions in order to advance ourselves collectively. But to answer the question about research, very quickly, I did a bibliography of African Canadian writers, and so a lot of those names are here. I also wrote an article on the death penalty in Black Canadians. And so a few of the names I emphasize are in fact people I view as having been victims of legal injustice, racism decades ago, for the most part. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking of Graham Norman Cromwell because there was a Maclean's Magazine article a couple of weeks ago that was looking at the Boucher case as being the first notable case where there seemed to be a question about jury composition. And in fact, the writer of that article, forgive me for not remembering his name, mentioned the killing of Grand Norman Cromwell here in Nova Scotia on June 8th, 1985, and the fact that his accused killer was acquitted by an all-white jury. The writer of the Maclean's magazine article was under the mistaken impression that no transcript had ever been created for that trial. And that was completely incorrect because I was involved with the Weymouth Falls Justice Committee, which was organized to try to fight for an appeal in that particular case. We were unsuccessful in getting an appeal, but we were successful in getting a transcript made of the trial. I think I can probably say, I'm not going to get in any trouble for mentioning that Ann Derrick was at that point, of course, simply a lawyer who represented the Weymouth Falls Justice Committee pro bono. And did review the transcript and did put forward a couple of arguments on our behalf to the then Attorney General of Nova Scotia in terms of seeking an appeal in the case. Again, that was not successful, but we did have a meeting with the Attorney General and the mother of the slain man, which was very important. So I knew about some of those names of people I consider to have been victims in some way, shape, or form of a somewhat racistly defined or organized justice system in this province. I mentioned Sandy Seal, of course, whose name should be quite familiar as the actual victim in the Donald Marshall Jr. case. Donald Marshall Jr., as you all know, of course, was accused of the murder. He being a Mi'kmaq man, was accused of the murder of Sandy Seal. And of course, Sandy Seal, the victim, was black. And a point that was not lost on Rocky Jones, amongst others, who intervened in the Marshall Inquiry back in 86, 87 rather, I should say, to seek, along with some notion of there being a more racially sensitive justice system in terms of Indigenous peoples, that also the victimization of black Nova Scotians also be addressed in the Marshall Inquiry, and it was. A whole volume was set aside for that. But in any event, I'm taking a long time to answer your very good question. And it's to say that I looked at my own research I'd done in the past, my own knowledge of folks, and looked at a few encyclopedia entries and newspapers and so on. Musicians appearing on CBC radio, and I jot down their names and look them up on the internet and say, okay, that's how it's spelled, and I throw them into the poem. And I'm embarrassed to say that there are many, many more names that are eligible to be included in this poem, and I hope one day to have them all included. But one of the structural principles of this poem is that I tried, it wasn't always true, but maybe I can say 95% of the lines in this poem are gender balanced. So I mention a woman, I mention a man. And that's essentially how I proceeded through the poem. And the other structural thing is that each line is 10 syllables. Each line is 10 syllables long. So that meant I had to do a lot of nipping and tucking to try to get certain names to fit in the line. But that also meant, in terms of trying to keep the gender balance as well, that some names just were not able to fit in at the moment until I can find, certainly, especially more women's names to enter into the poem. And then I can bring some of the long-suffering, omitted men into the poem as well. But they'll have to wait until I get some more women in the poem as well. So a lot of different sources, a lot of looking around, questioning. I worked for a member of Parliament for 4 years, and so I had access to memories of people that we met. I worked for Howard Douglas McCurdy for 4 years, 87, 91, and so I met Judge Stanley Grizzell, and of course, I already knew Wayne Adams from Nova Scotia, but a lot of folks and prominent in the black community, Denham Jolly, for instance, who organized, founded G98.7, which I actually list in the poem. It's a radio station, a black radio station in Toronto, which has been operating since 2011. And I think the existence of that radio station has done more to create a real black community sensibility in Toronto than anything else. Because G98.7 plays everybody's music. All the music from the African diaspora. So you have the calypso, you have the chutney from Trinidad as well, of course, a reggae from Jamaica primarily. lots of African American music, rap and soul and R&B and old school this and old school that, jazz on Sunday mornings. The only thing they're missing is Scotian music. They do have to have a Scotian take or connection there and bring some of our music in, but I'm not so sure they're ready for country and western, which some of us here really admire. I don't know if folks in Toronto will be ready to accept country and western as black music, but there it is. Anyway, sorry, I know I've rambled too much and didn't give a really concise, precise answer to your question, but I did check a lot of sources and just asked around and kept my ears and eyes peeled for different names and names from the Francophone context as well, to try to make the poem as representative as possible. And histories, of course, too.
One more. Oh, sorry. Running out of time. One. Oh.
Is there an annotated version of this, or is that a thesis topic for some future doctorate student?
Oh yes, it is. It is a project. I see this poem as being still very much a work in progress. I plan to include it in a forthcoming poetry book. If God spares me, I plan to publish a poetry book in 2021. And this poem would be part of it, and by then I may have added a couple more pages. Right now in this form, it's exactly 9 pages long. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or so stanzas per page, so you can do the math. That's like 63 or 64 stanzas of poetry, all in quatrains, 4 lines each, and you can do further math, 63 times 4. I'll let you worry about that. I could probably do it. 252 lines of poetry. And of course, Tim's magical accompaniment. But I do see it as a work in progress, and I hope that after I'm long gone, that someone might care enough to say, oh, well, he didn't put his own name in there. Let's add that name, and we can add some others too as we go along, and so on. So I remain hopeful that the poem will be extended. We are recording today, as a matter of fact, for a teacher in the Toronto District School Board who wrote to me last week to ask if there was a tape of this poem available. She wants to use the poem as a teaching tool for her students during Black History Month. And I will confess, I did intend for the poem to be used exactly in this way, for students to be forced, for pupils, I shouldn't say that, this is going to be shown, I think, to an assembly of students at a particular school. So I shouldn't say forced, but rather encouraged to go and do their own research to find out who these people are and pick up their backstories and give presentations on them. And to have a handy way to tell everybody who says, oh, I have no knowledge of Black history in Canada, who did what, and so on. Well, pick up this poem and at your leisure, especially these days with Wikipedia and lots of online information. It's not a problem to roll through a half dozen names, a dozen names, and learn, excuse me, and learn a bit more about Black history in the country and the various individuals who've done so much to enhance all of our lives in terms of their contributions and also the few names I put forward here representative of what I consider to have been judicial injustice. Now there's a project as well for those who are interested in looking at past wrongs in the legal system and trying to understand why they happened and trying to ensure that they do not happen ever again. And again, with an eye on producing a justice system that is just for everyone all the time, including all those folks who have been evading taxes. The Panama Papers. I know it's simply tax avoidance, excuse me. Not tax evasion, tax avoidance. I didn't mention any names, so I'm not in trouble. It's tax avoidance, which is of course completely okay.
I know I said one more, but can you please just spend maybe 30 seconds talking about how you came up with Acadian? I think that's essential.
Okay, sure. 1990-91, I was doing some research at the Public Archives, and for a book I was publishing called Wild Falls in 1990. And I came across a few pamphlets that had been published by Black Nova Scotians in the 19th century and the 18th century, and including one by John William Robinson, Book of the Bible Against Slavery, published in Halifax, 1852, an amazing publication. And I was thunderstruck. I hadn't really realized, even though I was 30 at the time, I didn't realize that there had been this record, as broken as it was, there was actually a record of literary productivity, publication in Nova Scotia amongst black Nova Scotians. And then I wanted to think of how to describe us, how to describe ourselves. And this is a perennial problem because by that point I'd been to University of Waterloo, I'd spent some time in Toronto, spent some time in Upper Canada, as I know folks down here still like to call it, and rightly so. And you know, being in contact with folks from the Caribbean, with of course African Americans and folks from Africa, I was always stumped when they would ask me, "What is your culture?" Yeah, you're from Nova Scotia, you understand that you've got roots going back there, generations and centuries and so on, but we still don't get it. We don't understand it. You know, black Nova Scotia, what's that? And I came to think about it and felt that we needed to have a name that was connected to territory, that was connected to this place. I chose Acadian, not because of actual Acadian, but because of its being a historical name for this part of the Maritimes. And also because of the fact that some scholars have argued that the word Cadie, C-A-D-I-E, which may in fact be the root for Acadie, is itself a Mi'kmaq word, Cadie, C-A-D-I-E. And we know that because we've got Tracadie, we've got Shubenacadie, and so on. The word still exists in place names in the province. And so actually, I was connecting folks of African ancestry to Cadie, which as a Mi'kmaq suffix means a place abounding in. So you put the two together, Africa and Cadie, you've got a place abounding in Africans, which I know is not exactly true. Not exactly. But that was the genesis for the name. And I still believe strongly that African Nova Scotians still need to have a name that demarcates us as a historic minority land owning, anchored in this province. You know, we may have African American roots, we may have Caribbean roots, but it's not possible for us to go back and live in the United States, or to go back to Africa and live in Africa, or to go to the Caribbean even and live there. Not very likely. And why should we have to? This is our home. We helped build Nova Scotia, literally, and went through centuries of dispossession and oppression, which we're only now just beginning to emerge from. And I think that we deserve the distinctiveness of a name that connects us to this territory. And along with that, I still want a flag, and I still want an anthem. But I'll settle for Old Freedom. I'll settle for Old Freedom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so very much.